Good morning and welcome to the April 24th, 1923 or 2023 Dunn County Planning Resource and Development Committee. Call the meeting to order. Looks like everybody on the committee is present. Approval of the minutes from the April 10th meeting. Supervisor Moore.
I'll make that motion.
Supervisor Bjork, Supervisor Moorhead seconds. Any discussion or corrections on the minutes? All in favor of approving them, say aye. Opposed, say no. Carries. We have some public comment or a public comment at least. Tom, you want to read that?
Yes, I can. Good morning, everyone. So let me bring this up on the screen for you. Okay, so this public comment was received via email on Tuesday, April 18th at 5:03 p.m. It was submitted by Terry Nichols. Members of the Planning, Research and Development Committee, after several years asking the question, does the groundwater recharge areas of this county have any bearing on where building takes place in the county? In the past, I have been told that the county is blind relating to groundwater recharge areas. I use the example of Meadows Edge Townhomes in Elk Mound Township. The subdivision is wedged between the interstate and a railroad. The one well that was tested in this subdivision was under 40 feet deep. I found this info at the DNR website, Well Viewer, I believe. I'm still looking for the other wells that I know are there. If you travel west a short ways, I see where 2 duplexes are in the works. I haven't checked the progress yet this spring. On traveling further on that road, the road curves to the north and I could see the buildings in Rusk to the west, and straight ahead of me I saw a CAFO spreading liquid manure on a field. I know that Elk Mound Township is unzoned. With all this talk back in 2019 and the year for groundwater at the state level, who is the first one in when the well goes bad? Is it the township, county, public health, or the state? I'm assuming that Meadows Edge Townhomes can't pick who the residents are living in these townhomes, which could be young couples with babies or seniors like myself. If groundwater recharge areas aren't taken into account relating to new buildings in this county, then where's the oversight? I know for a fact that there has been great progress in this county in broadband. I have a son and a daughter-in-law that telecommute to work and have for some time. With a robust broadband connection, many do not have to worry about where they live, such as engineers, designers, consultants, and the list goes on. While I don't expect this committee to have answers for all the problems they encounter, I do think the county needs to plan ahead, and maybe the county's comprehensive plan may be a good place to start relating to groundwater and land use. Thanks all. Terry Nichols, Town of Colfax.
Thank you, Tom. And thank you, Terry, for the comment. We will take it under consideration for sure. That's the only, we have no public hearing today. I wonder if I want to suggest a agenda adjustment to the committee. Now in number 8, we have a whole series of items that Mr. Carlson is bringing to us, and there is someone here to speak to those items. I'm wondering if it would be, without objection, would it be okay to move item 8 up to before staff reports, because those 2 staff reports may end up involving a lot of discussion? Okay, that's what we'll do then. So we'll go on to 8A, Mr. Carlson.
Okay, good morning again. As Mr. Quinn had mentioned here, there's quite a few things under item 8. They are all related. So there's 6 items there, but each one is dependent on the other, so to speak. So the first one, item 8A, determine the suitability of an existing access easement intended to provide access to several proposed new lots in the town of O'Galley. So I have a staff report here. I'm gonna jump down, bring up a sketch while I'm speaking. And this was in your packet. Hopefully you've all had a chance to take a look at this. So Sunset Haven LLC currently owns a tract of land comprised of 2 separate tax parcels that total approximately 4.5 acres. The subject property, as you can see, is on the east shore of Lake O'Galley. These tax parcels were originally created as part of a development that was laid out in October of 1971. Let me see. So that's this document right here. It was a survey map done by Lee Villeneuve. It was before the county had a land division ordinance in place. So you're looking at this thinking, well, we have 6 or 7 lots here. They were actually just meets and bounds descriptions. They weren't incorporated into any type of a plat or a certified survey map. This map was done, descriptions were written, title was transferred, and that's where these parcels originated back in the 70s. So back to the sketch here. The property is served by a driveway, which according to the applicant was constructed over 60 years ago. A portion of the driveway is constructed on a 16.5 foot wide access easement that was created and granted to other landowners within that 1971 development that I just had on the screen. So can everybody see that? I've got my cursor kind of here. This is County Highway Z that runs north and south. A town road runs off to the east. And then there's a 16.5 foot strip here where this driveway is built. Dunn County actually owns that strip of land. We'll get into that in a little bit here. So the applicant has rights to use it, and then all the other landowners to the north. And then you can see there's a Mr. Sins here in red. He's also got rights to use that. So, and it's been in place for quite some time. It is very narrow. It's 1 rod, 16.5 feet. The property is unzoned. However, it's located within a shoreland protection overlay zoning district. The subject property does contain some improvements. There's a trailer house down there near the water, a pole shed, 1 well, 2 septic systems, and of course the driveway. So the applicant would like to create 3 new lots down here, which are shown up on the sketch here in yellow, lots 1, 2, and 3. The resulting acreage is on there. Their plan is to continue to use the existing access easement that's coming in there. The easement, of course, doesn't meet our 66-foot width requirement in the land division ordinance. So that's why we're here this morning. Section 16.43 sub 1E provides the committee some guidance, and it reads, in part, existing public or private roads or easements that are proposed to provide access to newly created lots shall meet the requirements of this section. If a road does not meet such requirements, the subdivider shall meet with the town and the committee to determine the suitability of the existing road and determine what conditions, if any, need to be met to provide for adequate access. So based on communication with the applicant, the O'Galley Town Board met on April 10th of this year to review the suitability of the existing access easement. I do have a copy of the town's minutes here. They're not official yet. They won't be until next month, but right here, Joe and Mark Garlick presented the driveway easement. A motion was made by Chairman Don Hartung. That town of O'Galley has no problem with Sunset Haven LLC subdividing driveway easement, and seconded by Supervisor Bill Hartung. I did follow up with a phone call last week as well to Mr. Hartung, Don, and again, he just reiterated that the town sees no issues with continuing to use that road going in there and creating 1 additional parcel. So it's kind of a 2-part test here. As far as our ordinance is concerned, the applicant needs to meet with the town. That has already happened. The town is supportive of this. This is the second part of it now, is PR&D committee taking or reviewing this, making sure that there's going to be suitable access. Back to ownership of this strip, and I'll just zoom in here a little bit. So actually Dunn County owns the first 500 and I think it's 502 or 506 feet of this easement. Did a little research back in May of 1988. The county took it on a tax foreclosure. That's how we ended up with it. Why we still have it today, I don't know. It's maybe one of those that just got forgotten about. I suspect when the original developer created these lots, they just quit paying taxes on that little piece of the easement. You know, what good is it to them? And at the time, they probably should have deeded it to somebody, but I don't know. I'm reading between the lines. All we know is there were unpaid taxes. The county got it back, and the county still has title to that strip of land. So that concludes my report. I think I explained fairly well here what their plans are for the property. And at this point, the committee really needs to determine, is the existing easement coming in here adequate for the intended purpose? And again, the town has already met on this. They feel it is, and the committee, I guess, needs to have some discussion on it. And if there's anything else I can add, I'd be more than happy to, but that concludes my portion of the report.
Put your recommendation up.
And actually, I don't, I'll bring it up. I stopped short of making a recommendation. I just feel, I guess I could give you my recommendation verbally or in person, but I really think it's up, certainly the committee has got to, decide. If you want my personal take on this, as I look at, the survey map, so there are 7 parcels here. We're looking at introducing one more parcel to this development, if you want to call it that. And I think it could have been just as easily 8 lots here back in 1970. To me, adding one more lot back there, I don't think places a huge burden on the easement. According to the applicant, the easement has been working very well. There are some agreements in place, and Mr. Garlick is here, one of the members of the LLC, and he can certainly expand on some of this if you have questions. But according to him, there are some easements, or there are some agreements in place as far as maintaining the driveway, plowing the snow. Some money's been exchanged on that, and it just seems that everybody out here is getting along with respect to using the easement and maintaining it. And adding one more parcel here, in my mind, doesn't seem like it would. And again, that's just my opinion. If the plan was to put in 12 more lots, then I would say that's a whole different conversation. I should mention, according to the applicant, the property is going to stay. So if we look at the 3 lots, the property, find the sketch here again. So these 3 lots are going to stay within the family. There are some different family members that just want their own little private piece back there. Although in time, certainly these lots could change hands to somebody outside the family, but at least the immediate plans are, the family would have 3 parcels down here. Right now, they have 2 tax parcels, and they, in theory, could put up 2 new structures down there if the committee decides this is not a good idea. So really, if you look at this configuration, if you take out lot 3 and just take lots 1 and 2 and extend them all the way, so lot 1 would just extend across here, lot 2 would be here. Right now, they're not lots, of course, they're tax parcels, but there's one larger tax parcel and one smaller tax parcel. And this driveway, if you can see my hand here, this driveway comes in and goes up and serves a piece of land here owned by a Bladel. And then the driveway forks off and comes down, and that's how Mr. Sins down here takes his access. So it just seems like a logical place to divide the property, the 2 lakefront lots, if you will. And then there's a very wickedly steep hill right here. I mean, the terrain is just awful. And if you were down at one of these cottages here to get to this piece here, you'd physically have to walk up the driveway, come up the hill here, and then there's another easement running here, to get to this, plateau, if you will, up on top of the hill. So it's just a natural divider based on the topography. And as part of dividing, I know we're getting into a lot of things here which are coming up on the agenda, but it's all dovetails in and relates with one another. As part of moving forward, if these variances get approved, they would like to formalize some easements on these yellow dashed lines covering the driveway. They've been used for all these years, but nothing has been recorded at the Register of Deeds. So again, we've got a driveway that's been there a long time that seems to be working well for all the residents out there. The Sunset Haven LLC is looking to create one additional parcel out there. So the county would have one additional building site or a tax parcel, which I think would be, certainly a benefit for the town and the county, without placing, in my mind, additional burden on the easement. if we walk away today and the decision is this isn't a good idea, we're going to end up with one less house, and we're still going to have two homes. We could have two cottages there on these parcels. The wells, septics are in. Actually, there's one well, but there are two septics down there. And permits would be issued on those parcels provided they met setbacks and other requirements. So net result is we would end up with one additional parcel, and we would allow the landowners out here to formalize some easements in the process that would make any future land transactions go much smoother in the future. I think if a title company will get involved, some of these parcels were to be transferred, not having easements recorded is going to be a red flag. So I guess my recommendation would be to allow, or I guess the recommendation would be that the existing easement I feel is adequate for the intended purpose of what the applicant would like to do. So, but I'll turn it back over to the committee for discussion.
Question, Mr. Chair? So that parcel of land between lot 1, 2, and 3, where does that go? Right there where your cursor is. Is that part of any lot there or anything, or what is that? Or
I was gonna get up and point on the screen, but then I lose my audio. So my hand here, so the dark yellow lines would be the proposed new lot lines.
okay,
And then the dashed yellow lines would be the proposed access easements. We're not quite sure on the width yet. You know, we're thinking maybe 20 feet, could be 16 and a half feet, one rod, just to keep it consistent with the easement coming in, but certainly no more than is necessary to just cover the driveway. Let's face it. I mean, if we run even a 33-foot wide easement or a 66-foot wide easement in there, nobody in the right mind is going to expand the road. It's so steep on both sides. We'd be introducing erosion in there. And it's not like we're serving a whole host of lots back there. The driveway's been working fine. The thought is just run the bare minimum width in there to cover the driveway. So again, this driveway, Mr. Sins right here, if you look at his lot, right, it's bounded on the north by the yellow line, and then it's bounded on the other sides by the red. He has an easement that comes in from Z, gets him to here, but then he's physically driving, his house is right here by my hand, and there's a very steep hill right here. He's driving up here, following my hand, till he hits this fork and then comes down through the applicant's property to get to his house. And he doesn't have an easement there. And we think in talking with the applicant that documents were drawn up years ago, but they, for whatever reason, didn't get recorded. And nobody really questioned it. Everybody's been agreeable out there. And the applicant's been letting Mr. Sins drive through there. And in all honesty, he may have acquired prescriptive easement rights. That's a whole nother legal set of things. But if they can finalize or formalize an easement agreement and get it recorded, that's much better, in my opinion, than going to court and trying to claim an easement by prescriptive use. So back to your question, Gary, is everything clear here? We've got 3 proposed lots. We're looking at running an easement down the main driveway here. So Bladel, who's been using that, can now formalize his access right here. And then Sins would need another easement, comes down here to access his property. And the lot line between 1 and 2 and lot 3 here would follow the east edge of the driveway. It makes the most sense. It's a natural divider. So in doing so, I mean, we're getting into the next agenda items here in the variance request, which is maybe a little premature, but again, it's pertinent to the discussion. Lots 1 and 2 are going to be severed by this access easement that I'm running my hand down. They won't be severed by this piece of it because it's straddling the lot line, or it's just the lot line is being offset. But this proposed easement will in effect sever lots 1 and 2. It does now. Those properties are severed now.
so is that, I haven't answered my question, is that center part there, is that an outlot or what?
Nope, it's part of lot 2. It's a severed.
Okay,
it's-
I didn't see any dash lines connecting the two. So that 1.75 acres contains that part. Right, Okay, I wasn't, okay. And the only problem I see, like with a narrow driveway, is when you're plowing snow, it's pretty hard to keep it all on your land or on the easement. If it gets to be like like, you know, this winter, you're gonna be putting, the snow out on somebody else's property.
Yeah, that's a concern. I can't speak to that. I mean, maybe perhaps the applicant later on can address the committee on that, or maybe now is the appropriate time, but
Are there, at this point, are there other questions?
Okay, so big picture, we're basically doing two things today. We're creating an additional lot and we're approving some access easements. And then as a result of all those things, we have a whole bunch of variances that we have to approve as well. Is that kind of big picture what we're doing?
Yes, the first item of business is to determine if the existing substandard width easement is going to be adequate for the intended purpose. And we need to keep that separate. So right now, the committee needs to determine, I guess the discussion right now revolves around this first 500 feet. That's the access easement coming in. And I know we spent quite a bit of time already talking on what's going to happen down here because it's important. But what's happening down here is coming next. Right now, we need to focus on the first 500 feet, the dashed yellow lines here. Is that easement that's serving the property adequate for creating one additional parcel down here? It's less than 66 feet. Our ordinance says it has to be. But because it's existing, the ordinance recognizes that and said, well, the applicant needs to meet with the town and the county to determine what conditions, if any, need to be met. One condition is, I suppose the committee could say, well, we need that widened out to 66 feet. That certainly could be a condition. That would take land from somebody else and it would need their permission. And I don't know if any of those discussions have happened, or could happen in the future. And is it necessary?
Tom, does the county plow that part of the road?
Not to my knowledge. I don't believe so.
Are we liable to plow it if something happens on there, and it's not plowed? Is the county liable?
That I can't answer. I don't know.
And is it 18 feet?
16 and a half.
16 and a half, okay. Could a condition be to have some kind of improvement or some kind of agreement with this part of the road?
The applicant, in my discussion with him, they are going to formalize some maintenance agreements, and actually our ordinance does require that. Our land division ordinance requires anytime more than two parcels are using an easement, they have to draft maintenance agreements and submit them along with their we need to approve those, I guess, as part of the certified survey map approval process and review.
So there is an easement, but the county owns the land.
Correct.
And there's an easement over the county's land, over the entire piece of land that the county owns.
Correct.
Okay. It seems unusual. Okay, thank you.
So dealing with item A on here, are there any questions? Any more questions? So what as Supervisor Barrier pointed out, we'll deal with all of these items one at a time. And the first one is A, the suitability of the existing easement. You've heard the discussion and the questions. Does anyone have any more questions or points they want to make? Anyone feel comfortable making a motion to, I guess we need motions on these, Tom?
Yes, they are action items.
Okay. On item A in particular, the suitability of the existing easement.
I'll move approval, Mr. Chairman.
More, is there a second?
I'll second.
Supervisor Barrier seconds. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Go through these quickly. Item number B, the variance to allow for the creation of 2 lots, which do not contain 30,000 square feet of buildable area. You want to talk to that, Tom?
Sure, and I have a staff report that kind of incorporates all these into one, but then we'll take them up as separate
You want to
motions.
go through them all at once, or would you, what's the makes the most sense to you?
My preference would be to go through my entire staff report and then take them up one at a
That's fine.
time at the conclusion
Yeah.
of that. Okay? So I'm gonna just bring the sketch back up. So we have some variance requests, of course, in front of us. They're coming from Sunset Haven LLC. They're requesting the following 5 variances. They want to create 2 lots which do not contain 30,000 square feet of contiguous buildable area. Second request is a variance allowing for 2 proposed lots to be bisected by a proposed access easement. Third request is create a new access easement that's less than 66 feet in width. The fourth request is to allow for more than 4 lots to be accessed by an access easement. And the last one is to waive the 75-foot building setback line from existing wetlands on the property. So a little background, we already talked about where the land is located. It's part of a development from 1971. We talked about the driveways that are coming in there. So they want to make 3 new lots as illustrated in the site plan. Lot 1 will be bounded on the east by an existing driveway. It currently contains a well and a septic system. There was a trailer house that was on lot 1. You can see it on the photo that has since been removed. Lot 2 will be bounded on the east by the existing driveway and currently contains a trailer house, a pole shed, and a septic system. Lot 3 represents lands that are physically separated by an existing driveway serving the property to the north. As part of creating the 3 lots, the 3 new lots, the applicant would also like to formalize an access easement with the neighbors over the existing driveways, which you can see results in lots 1 and 2 being severed. The subject property does have wetlands, significant amount of steep slopes, and a portion of the property is mapped as being within the 100-year floodplain. So the creation of these 3 lots requires compliance with Chapter 16 of the Land Division Ordinance. Section 16.466 requires each newly created lot to contain a minimum of 30,000 square feet of contiguous buildable area. Lot 1 doesn't contain any contiguous buildable area. When we look at environmentally sensitive areas, there are some wetlands. I don't have them on the screen here, but it's a combination of slopes, wetland, and floodplain. When we start buffering those wetlands, they don't have any square feet. That counts towards the 30,000. But it is an existing tax parcel. There are improvements on there, and permits would be issued for that lot, provided they meet the required setbacks. So we need to keep that in mind. Lot 2 also doesn't meet the 30,000 square feet of contiguous buildable area. Then we jump down to section 16.462 of the ordinance. No lots or outlots created by certified survey map or plat shall be bisected by a public or a private road. Well, their plan is to bisect lots 1 and 2. Section 16.433A of the ordinance states no more than 4 lots may be accessed by a private road. Right-of-way width shall be a minimum of 66 feet. The proposed easement will be serving more than 4 lots, and due to the steep topography, the easement is going to be less than 66 feet in width. At least that's what they're proposing. To make it wider just really wouldn't serve a good purpose, and it would really sever lots 1 and 2 if we made that much wider, the usable area there for those properties, which are already quite small. Section 16.214E of said ordinance requires a 75-foot building setback line from the existing wetlands. There are wetlands located on lot 1, and when we apply the 75-foot building setback line, nearly the entire proposed lot would be unbuildable. And the applicant wants to replace the former trailer house that has since been removed from lot 1. So the applicant has applied for a variance. I received their application, has paid the fee. All the required information has been submitted. The purpose of now I'm gonna go through the different variance requests and kind of a staff analysis. So the purpose of the contiguous buildable area standard is to ensure that there's adequate area for building use and sufficient area suitable for the entire on-site wastewater treatment system and its replacement. Lot 1 was formerly used as a building site with some of the associated infrastructure still in place. Lot 2 is currently used as a building site, and does have a functioning septic. Even though these 2 lots do not meet the contiguous buildable area requirement, staff feel that there's enough necessary associated infrastructure in place to ensure that these 2 lots 1 and 2 again, are in fact buildable. If the variances are not approved today, the 2 tax parcels will continue to be bisected by the existing driveways. In addition, the applicant could place a new residential structure on each of the parcels without having to comply with the 75-foot building setback line. Approval of the variances will allow the applicant to reduce the area of each of the tax parcels and create 1 additional residential parcel, which will have minimal impact on the existing 16.5 wide access easement. The current driveway serving the subject property and the neighboring properties, according to the applicant, has been in place for many years and is adequately serving its intended purpose. Requiring a width greater than that, certainly 66 feet, according to the ordinance, in my mind would serve no practical purpose given the steepness of the terrain. Could also potentially increase erosion on the site. And as part of the CSM approval process, maintenance agreements for the proposed easements will be required. I'm not going to go through all the variance requirements. They were in your packet. If there's any questions on those, I'd be glad to get into those in more detail. And lastly, the variance can't be contrary to Wisconsin statute or administrative code. The granting of the variance will not be would not be contrary to either state statute or the administrative code. So recommendation based on the above analysis and variance requirements. I'm recommending approval of each of the applicant's variance request, reconfiguring the 2 tax parcels into 3 new lots and formalizing access easements for the subject property and the neighboring properties is consistent with the purpose and intent of chapter 16. One thing I do want to add, it's not in my staff report, is the concept of overburdening an easement. And I'm not sure if the committee members are aware of that. So in general terms, say I have 40 acres of land and I deed 20 acres off to Supervisor Morehouse and it's landlocked. So I give her a 66-foot easement going back to her 20 acres. Down the road, she decides to take that 20 and make 4 lots out of it and then extend the easement that she was given to those 4 new lot owners. That's not what I had intended. I intended for Diane, Supervisor Morehouse, to have a driveway back in there. If I knew she was going to divide that into 4 or 5 properties, I would have never deeded her the property. You understand what I'm saying? It's the easement was granted to Supervisor Morehouse, but it doesn't allow her to. I mean, she certainly could extend that easement to somebody, but then we enter this legal concept of overburdening the easement. And now I have all these people driving because I own the property yet under that easement. And I initially looked at this as, okay, we've got an easement in here. It was for these 7 parcels. And now we're creating a new parcel back here. Is that overburdening this easement? And I guess this is a little bit different situation. The original landowner is gone from the picture. The county owns the property under here. And I would say by virtue of the committee taking action today, you are granting, you're granting approval to use that easement for lot 3. So I just want to enter that into the discussion as well to let you know I did think about that. But again, I think by virtue of the committee taking action today, that issue would resolve itself. That's all I have for my staff report. I'll mention again, the applicant is here. If you have any specific questions, perhaps on the maintenance, he can answer some of that. Or if you have any other questions, I'll turn it back over to you, Tom.
Sure. Supervisor Kinnear.
Thank you. Is lot 3 buildable?
It appears to have enough room on there. Yes, it's flat up on top. I mean, it's very steep on the westerly side near the driveway, but it is an 1.5 acres. And Yeah, it's according to the applicant, it's the most beautiful piece of the three. It's up real high and has the best view of the lake. And obviously depends what kind of structure they want to put in there, but we feel there's enough flat area up on top where a well, a septic and a home could go in. But right now we have no soil tests. We can't say definitively, but it appears, yes, that it would be a buildable parcel.
Thank you.
So, Burke,
Thank you, sir. Would there be less like variance requested if it would have been kept in the two parcels? 'Cause it
We
seems-
wouldn't be here today if they just kept their two tax parcels. They could
Okay.
put two new homes there. Life would move on. The reason we're here today is they're trying to create a third parcel, a land division, which triggers our ordinance requirements.
But it just seems like there's a lot of like variances that have to be accepted to get this part done.
This is a unique piece of property,
Right.
just with the way that the driveway is the big driving factor why we're here today. Its location and its width.
Thank you.
Tom, does this easement, the county the county, does this easement also serve the lots to the north of these properties?
Yes,
So all the total number of lots served would be what?
well, if we go to, oops, now, when you get on the north end, and I haven't researched that end, full disclosure, as much as I would have liked to. But you can see from the original development, there are 7 parcels here. When you get up on the north end by lot 7, I believe that lot is taking access from the north. There is a dead end road that comes in from the north into a cul-de-sac. But for the sake of argument, let's just say we have 7 in here. So yes, there would be 8 parcels taking access from that road total. Right now, we would have 7. And I believe parcel 7 is taking access from the north.
So under current statutes, that wouldn't be allowed, right? This driveway would be too small?
Correct. If this was vacant land and they were proposing this many lots, for one, we'd be looking at a subdivision plat.
Right.
And number 2 is, yeah, we'd be requiring a 66-foot easement running in there.
Supervisor Kinnear.
Thank you again. So in the future, could those other northerly lots be subdivided? They're large enough? We could have the same request is basically, could that come in multiple times here in the future?
It could. Mm-hmm.
And then if we approve this and we don't approve more, that'd be difficult, wouldn't it? We've already done it.
I don't want to say you're setting a precedence, but certainly that would come into the decision. I mean, any rational person would look at that and say, well, you allowed this for my neighbor. Now, what am I doing different that doesn't afford me the same rights to my property? I guess we'd have to look at those properties and see would they be able to be divided based on where the improvements are, where's the buildable area. We just know for a fact that this property, does lend itself well to dividing along that driveway. It's a natural divider. If you can picture walking down this driveway and looking to the east towards lot 3, it's a very steep hill. I mean, you certainly can't drive up it. And according to the applicant, walking up it would be quite difficult as well. I mean, it's very steep.
So the dotted yellow line that we're looking at actually continues up through the rest of the lots? That's a question.
Yes, so on the east side, where my hand is, there's a 16.5-foot easement that runs along the east line of all these lots, 1 through 7.
Okay. Thank you.
And it was intended to provide access to all those properties up there.
Thank you.
Question.
Yes.
So the proposed access easement, the one that's running between lots 2 and 3 right now, so that doesn't serve any additional properties to the north. Is that, or that existing driveway, it kind of stops there at the border of lot 2 and 3?
So if you can see in red
Yeah.
Bladel here, it would just serve that one lot, right? So-
Okay,
Somebody had two parcels. They were long, if you look at lot one and kind of superimpose that here, there were two, this property that's now owned by two parties. There was a line running east-west, kind of right where my hand is going. There were two long skinny rectangles here. They hired a surveyor and reconfigured those prior to the adoption of our new land division ordinance. And instead of that dividing line running east and west, they ran it north and south. Because this driveway had always come in here. So now Bladel is still using this driveway, but Ramsden, the current owner of this parcel, is driving up through here to get to their property. So net result is we don't have two new lots here. They're just reconfiguring two of those original parcels from 1971, and they're running the division line north and south instead of east and west. So this driveway coming in here, is currently serving the Bladel property and will continue to serve it regardless of what we do today, what our decision is. But then that driveway forks off, and that's how the applicant gets down the hill to their waterfront improvements. And then Sins is also taking his access through that driveway as well.
So that driveway does not go further beyond that northern lot there? the
Correct,
Bladel lot, okay.
correct. But the driveway here where my hand
That,
is
that
running,
does serve those
that
lots.
runs all the way up. Correct,
Is that an existing driveway?
yes.
Okay.
And the easement for that goes way back to the 70s,
Sure.
at the time when those parcels were created.
Sure. Um.
There's a lot going on here. There is.
When you, when Supervisor Kinnear mentioned the, setting a precedent, you said I think you made the argument that not necessarily we have the ability to say no, although that could trigger some action. But I saw Ann over there, kind of shaking her head. I thought, no, okay, I didn't. All right, just want to make sure. Okay, all right. Uh, any further thoughts? Would it be helpful to hear from Mr. Garlick? Mr. Garlick, would you care to just go up to the podium up there and click on? You share with us you heard the discussion and some of the questions, and just share with us your responses to it.
Okay. Yeah, first, welcome. Thank you for my ability to participate here. Now, just very quickly, just to give you a little bit of background of who we are. My father bought this land back in the mid-70s. So when he passed away, myself and my other three siblings bought this from my mother. And so that's where we've got 4 different family members that have this. There was a couple, when you look at what we have here, when you try to keep something like this in the family and you want to allow our kids to be able to continue to use this type of property, the more members you get, the more complex things become, right? So we think this makes perfect sense to allow this to be the case. To some of the points and questions that I thought were brought up first with regards to maintenance. Ron Sins does the maintenance today, and it was always a handshake agreement between my dad, Ron Sins, and at the time was Brantner's, who now is Bladel's, and Ron Sins maintains the road, and then we just split the cost of what that costs to maintain the road, and he plows it all the way to County Road Z. Okay, and that's always worked very well. As Tom had mentioned, there's no recorded easement down across our property to Ron Sins and the Bladels. Our intention is to make that official. And with that, we would formulate on a maintenance agreement so that if something were ever to happen, Ron Sins were to sell or Bladels and so forth, that it's all properly in place so that it protects people in the future wanting to develop their land or continue to use their land. I'm sorry, was there any other specific questions that you'd like to ask? Excuse me just a minute. One of the statements was, is it possible that there could be more developments on that north side going up the easement that exists now? If you look at the terrain of those lots, I don't see how it's really possible. You know, Brantner subdivided the one where now Bladel has, that was a buildable one, and there's a couple other cabins up there that are existing. Anything beyond that, the steepness of the hill is such that I don't see the likelihood of someone being able to put additional properties back there. It's possible maybe, but probably unlikely.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, so would it be appropriate to consider these as a whole in one motion? Do you think, Tom, or do you want motion on each of them?
I would prefer that you take them up separately.
Okay.
It just keeps the minutes
That's fine.
cleaner
No
and
problem. We'll do that. So, item, we already acted on item A, item B. Assuming everyone's still okay with that? Okay. Item B, is there a motion on this?
I will move to accept.
Was it Kinnear moves? Is there a second? More seconds? Any further discussion, questions?
Could you put the motion or the variance up on the, so you see exactly what we're doing? Up on the first page here? Just so we know what we're actually.
Yeah, sure.
I didn't, that's what I'm looking at.
There
And
we
I
go.
wonder too, if it wouldn't be a good idea on that, easement, that we wait until we have something in writing, so we're not creating a hardship for somebody or somebody not having access.
Item
Have
A,
something. Step back, whichever one that is for the.
item A is the easement.
Turn us to build it because that's already been approved, huh?
Well, we can go back and revisit it.
I just thought it'd be more appropriate if we could see what kind of, agreements that they had in place. So we're not creating any landlocked or, so everybody knows like who's maintaining the road and what percent of the road, if there's gravel got to be brought in, that kind of stuff, that gets kind of contentious.
Go
Down
ahead,
the
Tom.
road.
Yeah, I think you talked about this before, but go ahead.
yeah, so typically how this would work, Supervisor Bjork, is if these variances get approved today, the applicant will get a hold of a surveyor. Surveyor is going to come out and do the surveying, prepare a certified survey map. That map gets submitted to the county for review. Ann and I will be performing that review. And as part of their submittal, in this case, they're going to have to submit maintenance agreements. They're going to have them drawn up. They won't necessarily be recorded yet. I suppose they could be, but they will actually have some maintenance agreements drafted that we are going to review. We can certainly bring them to the committee. The ordinance doesn't require that. But in this case, if you wanted to make that a condition of the certified survey map approvals to have those maintenance agreements reviewed by the committee, you certainly could place that condition today on your approval. Again, it's not required, but if you feel that strongly about that the committee wants to see those, staff will be reviewing those, I can tell you that. And we're not going to approve the certified survey map if the easements aren't in place either. So, we will be dotting the i's, crossing the t's on all this stuff. But if the committee wants to see that, we certainly could make that as that exception.
So do you and Ann inspect all, CSMs? No matter
Yes.
how big they are or how small they are?
Yep.
Okay, good, because once we get back in that section 16, there's a question I want to bring up on that, so. No, I mean, if you guys are really going over it, make sure everything is okay, then I'm satisfied with that.
Okay.
Okay, so we're at item B and we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Carries. Item C, variance to allow two proposed lots to be bisected by proposed town access easement. Anyone care to make a motion? Let's just do it. Come on. Supervisor Kinnear and Supervisor Barrier, seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Item D, variance request to create a new access easement less than 60.
Sorry.
Did I miss one?
I'll move approval of that. The
Okay.
variance request.
Supervisor Barrier, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Did I miss C? Okay. E. Variance request to the town of Argali to allow more than 4 lots to be accessed by an access easement. Is there a motion to approve that variance request?
I'll move approval of that.
Swear. Yeah, I have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Item F, variance request to waive the 75-foot building setback. Is there a motion for that?
I'll move approval.
Barrier, as far as barrier, is there a second? Supervisor Morehouse seconds. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Garlick. Okay. We're back up to staff reports. Item A, review proposed ordinance amendments to address residential uses in commercial zoning districts. You, Ann.
So I just wanted to give a little update since I don't have specific language to update the committee. I kind of hit a little bit of a snag when I found the 2016 Act 391 regarding down zoning. So I'm kind of going through that a little bit more with Nick. Down zoning. Sorry. Would you like me to define? Okay. Sorry, I just see you mouthing and I'm trying to talk. So in general, it's when people talk about housing density, and commercial development and industrial development, that's moving up. When you remove, permitted uses in a zone, especially residential, that's considered down zoning. There's been talk of that being a takings because you're essentially removing a permitted use from an ordinance. So what happens, at least under Wisconsin, and I'm still trying to get all this under my own thoughts, but if this were to go to the county board, there would need to be a 2/3 vote rather than just a majority. So there's some things there that I kind of want to go through before we get a little bit, but I believe we should be able to have something the first meeting next month that kind of clears up some of that. Did anyone have any questions for me regarding this process so far?
Yeah.
Just thanks for the update. I want to keep it on the burner, so thank you.
It's still on the burner.
Anything else, Sam? Is that just the update?
I just want to let you know that it's
Yep,
not going
okay.
away. and
All right.
We're still working on it and where
All
we're
right.
at.
Any questions? Okay, thank you for the update. And keeping it on the burner. Okay, so item B, review of proposed amendments to the chapter 16 land division. Mr. Carlson.
Thank you. So I've got a staff report here. It's very brief. There was just a few items that Corp Council and I have worked on since the last meeting at the direction of the committee. I'm gonna skip over the landlocked parcel discussion. We'll leave that to the end. We'll just jump right into the draft ordinance here. We'll go down to line 28.
Can you make it a little bigger, Tom, on the screen?
Yep.
Thank you.
So again, there's just a few minor things in here. So line 28, this is so just for some context, I believe this is the purpose section. Yes. So the purpose section of the ordinance, it's talking about review of proposed condominium instruments in our original draft or current ordinance, I guess. The review of proposed condo instruments that is identical to the review procedures for land divisions. Well, they're not identical, so we changed that, just a minor change, using the verbiage similar to. It's similar but not identical, so just a minor change there. Line 119. So this is in the definition section, the high water elevation. We just thought we need to define what a 100-year storm event is. So we're just adding a statement to the end of the definition that says a critical 100-year storm is either a 100-year back-to-back storm event or a 10-day snow melt event, whichever is more restrictive. So it just provides more clarity to that definition. So that's a very minor change that we feel is warranted. Then we got to jump all the way down to 955. So this is the culmination of the discussions we've had at the last few meetings regarding turnarounds on dead end roads, right? Allowing for something other than a cul-de-sac. So we've added this language, so again, roads that are designed as permanent dead ends, such private roads shall terminate with either. We're giving somebody an option now. They're not pigeonholed into just doing a cul-de-sac and nothing else. So such private roads shall terminate with either a full 360-degree circular turnaround having a minimum turnaround right-of-way radius of 75 feet and a minimum finished driving surface radius of 50 feet, or with some other style of turnaround approved by the local municipality and emergency responders having jurisdiction. That leaves it wide open. The developer can meet with the town, they can meet with the EMS that's gonna serve that area, the fire chief, and come up with something that's gonna work for everybody. And it may be something different than a cul-de-sac. Who are we to say that a hammerhead isn't gonna work here? If the people that are using it feel it's the best option for the development. So I know we spent quite a bit of time on this. Is the committee satisfied with this verbiage or have any questions?
Supervisor Kinnear.
So does this mean that the emergency responders could veto a particular style of turnaround? Approved by local municipality and emergency responders?
I would say they'd have to work hand in hand, and if the fire chief that's serving the area says that this isn't gonna work, I would like to think the developer would work with that fire department and design something that, I don't know if I'm answering your question.
No, not yet. It'd be nice if they worked together, but it doesn't always happen.
Right, and as far as vetoing, I mean, at the end of the day, whatever comes before the committee, I mean, that's what's getting submitted. And if the fire chief isn't happy, I don't know what recourse they would have other than to express their discontent. I suppose they could come to this committee and say, I notice this plat is before you. We're recommending So do they have veto authority? No, but I think they would certainly have influence on this committee. And the committee could look at that and say, well, the fire chief isn't real happy with this. But is that grounds for this committee to deny approval of the plat? I would hope it wouldn't come to that.
Okay, but it seems it says, you've got the shall up above and approved by emergency responders. It seems like we would have it's okay. I'm not saying anything wrong with this, but it just seems like if they came in and told us that it wasn't any good or they didn't approve it, well, it wouldn't be, it wouldn't go along with our ordinance then. As long as we look at that in the future, if the fire department comes in and says, no, we don't like that. This says they have to approve it.
That's how I'm reading this.
Okay.
When I dig deep into it or with some other style of turnaround approved. So yeah, if the fire chief is not approving of this, then I think that would be grounds for this committee to say, we're not going to approve the plat.
Good. That's what I'd like to see. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, go on, Tom.
And just to follow up on this, I think we're still going to see. Right, we don't get a lot of plats that come in, and the ones that come in, I think we're still going to see cul-de-sacs, but this just gives them another option. So, line 1243. This one here, Corp Council and I struggled with for some time. And this is the variance section, and I'll read the verbiage that we're proposing to strike. A majority vote of the entire membership of the committee shall be required to grant a variance of any standard within this chapter, and the reasons therefore shall be entered in the committee minutes. I actually brought this to Nick's attention because I've often wondered, what exactly is this saying? As we all know, the county board chair can attend any of the standing committees and is a voting member, as I understand it. So this committee at certain times under circumstances could have 6 people voting, right? And in talking with Nick and reviewing our notes from before, this provision was to eliminate a situation where a quorum, so let's just say we had a quorum, 3 of you show up for a meeting. 2 of you are the majority now. We have two members of a 5-member committee, if circumstances were right, approving a variance request. And we wanted to eliminate that situation, which maybe would never happen, but it certainly could. So we have a quorum of 3. We have 2 committee members making a decision for a committee of 5. And this says a majority of vote of the entire membership, which would mean 3. But then the question was brought up, what if County Board Chair McCullough attended this meeting? And we just thought it's not even necessary to have this in here. We're just going to strike it. It would eliminate a possible ambiguous situation if the county board chair was present at a meeting. Is he technically a member of the committee? And we wrestled with this for quite some time. And the decision to remove it didn't come lightly, but then we thought, well, what are the benefits of leaving it in here? So we're proposing to strike this for the reasons I mentioned. And I don't know if there's any questions or strong feelings from the committee. Nick is not here today. He's not with us. So, and we certainly could leave it in there, but we just feel it's not necessary to leave it in there. Without it in there, I mean, a variance comes before the committee, you take action, and if it's not clear by the voice vote, you call a roll call vote, and it's the majority. It's just understood it's a majority vote
Majority of the members voting.
that are there that day.
Yeah, that seems reasonable to me. Anybody have a problem? Okay.
So that concludes the minor changes we made to the ordinance itself. And then I want to follow up on Supervisor Bjork's concern and comments from the last meeting regarding landlocked parcels. So I'll go back up. So in your packet, I included Wisconsin statute, chapter 82.27. So we'll get into that in a little bit here. So again, I just want to reiterate, landlocked parcels are not illegal. They can be created. There's nothing in state law that makes them illegal. They can be bought and sold just like any other property. From a transactional perspective, the only additional requirement is a disclosure duty on behalf of the seller and real estate licensee informing potential buyers of that restriction. So there is that duty. Now, whether or not that happens, may not be the case. So landlocked owners do not have an absolute legal right to public access, but they do have a statutory right to petition the government for access, provided the landlocked owner has first attempted to secure easement rights. And chapter 82.27 outlines how you do that. I'm not going to go through all the provisions in here. Hopefully you've had a chance to read that. The reason for including it is just to show you that there is a procedure out there. And it really involves towns more so than anybody. And just because this procedure is in place doesn't mean it's a guarantee either. I mean, the town has to weigh everything out. And just because you petition doesn't guarantee you're going to get some type of an access easement in there. In some instances, access rights could be established by a prescriptive easement. We talked about the driveways earlier and those variance requests that have been there a long time. They've been used for a period of 20 years, but a person would have to enforce those rights. They would have to commence an action in circuit court. And then I just want to get into, placing, because we talked about putting something in the land division ordinance, prohibiting any transaction of a landlocked parcel in the county. And as I talked with Corp Counsel about this, there's a lot of larger parcels out there that technically would be exempt from our land division ordinance. Somebody sells a 40 or north half of a 40, 20, anything over 20 acres. So a landlocked 40 is sold. The person drawing up the deed doesn't even think to consult the land division ordinance because they don't consider what they're doing a land division, right? It's an existing parcel. They deed off the landlocked 40. I'm not actively searching for those. So if I do find out about it, it's likely going to come from perhaps the Register of Deeds, who's maybe not, I see Heather's with us by Zoom this morning, but I don't think the Register of Deeds is actively searching every Monday morning for landlocked parcels. They're recording documents. A real property lister's office may catch it, may not. The point I'm trying to make is if it does come to my attention, it's going to be after the fact. The land has already exchanged hands, and I mentioned this last time. So then what do I do about it? So we have a provision in our ordinance, let's say, that prohibits this. I find out about it, it's a violation. How do I go to that new owner and say, well, you messed up here. The person you got it from didn't give you an easement, and now I'm going to fine you, or you have to give the land back. And that's very troubling to me versus if we have a land division, somebody's creating a 5-acre parcel that needs an easement. We're reviewing that. We're telling them, hey, you need this easement. We're not going to approve the map unless you have this in here. And it's just easier to catch it during an active review process instead of trying to deal with something after the fact. And I think that's the biggest issue in my mind. I guess it's twofold, putting that type of a prohibition in a land division ordinance where people aren't thinking to look for it, especially on these larger parcels, and then enforcing it after the fact. Those are the biggest things. I know I talked with Nick and he was in agreement on that. I wish he was here this morning. He could perhaps go into some more detail or give his legal opinions on that. But right now, after consulting with Nick, we don't feel putting language in the land division ordinance prohibiting any parcel in the county from being conveyed or conveying a landlocked parcel in the county to be a violation or to be a requirement that all parcels in the county shall have some type of an access easement to them. not be landlocked. So I don't really have anything else to add unless there's any questions.
No questions.
great.
So do all CSMs come before you? Even some person might wanna like 80 acres surveyed because they don't know in the woods where the line is, they have it all surveyed. Does that come for your review too, or is it gotta be under 40 or 20 acres before you review it?
Good question. So we made a change to, well, the current ordinance that we have on the books says all CSMs, regardless of size, need to come before the county for review. The ordinance before that we were working from 2006 didn't. So if somebody had a large piece of land, 35 acres, technically they could just have a map, a survey, write a legal description, convey that. Some people chose to have a certified survey map done because it provides a nice, clean legal description. Sometimes banks require it. So these CSMs that were coming in that were over 20 acres, we didn't review because technically they weren't required to do a CSM. Even if it was 21 acres, threshold is 20. So you're over 20 acres, you just want a lot one on a certified survey map, you can do that and save the review fee. County did not review those. With our new ordinance from a year ago, we put a provision in there, like I said, all CSMs, regardless of size, are gonna need review by the county. So if, to answer your question, if somebody's trying to do a 80-acre CSM lot, we will review that for the fee.
So I can see where it'd be very difficult to keep track of all transactions for being like landlocked. But what would be wrong with something in the ordinance that like no CSM will be accepted that results in a landlocked parcel?
We have that in there already.
For under 20 acres, is that also above 20 acres?
By default, it would be, because if somebody's doing an 80-acre CSM, which by the way, I think would be very, very rare, but it could happen.
Mhm.
So somebody's gonna take their 240s, combine them together with a CSM. Our ordinance says all newly created lots, which is what they're creating, shall have 33 feet of frontage directly on a private or public street or on an access easement.
Okay,
So it takes care of it. The fact that they're doing a CSM would trigger the frontage requirement.
and that's what I was really looking for, so yeah.
But if they sold one of those 40s with, and didn't create a CSM and landlocked it, right now we have nothing in the ordinance preventing that.
Okay. So I guess the new language from last year does make a big difference then, to me.
If they're doing a CSM, but again, they still could convey
Yeah.
a
Would that
60
be
acre parcel.
impossible to keep track and be just not really feasible?
We would catch it after it already happened,
That's
which
the
makes it problematic.
At least on your CSM though, it is taken care of.
Yes.
Okay. That's my only question on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any, or you go ahead, Tom, then, for anything further?
Nope, that concludes my part.
Any other questions from the committee? Okay, so next steps, Mr. Carlson.
Next step would be for staff to schedule a public hearing.
Okay,
So we're gonna have to publish that in the paper, class 2 notice, so it's gonna be a while before we come back here. Probably, the next month or so. And then it will, provided the public hearing goes well, then it would need 2 readings at county board. So
okay. I'm wondering, I know there's some town officials here, just to make sure we close the loop. Are there any comments you folks have? Yeah, going up.
Tony Gustaverson, E 9920, 630th Avenue, Elk Mound. Chairman for the town of Elk Mound, thank you for your opportunity to have some input. On the chapter 82.27, if we go to 6, and the way it reads to me is that, so if in a town, if a owner of land that is accessible or that is provided with an easement to a public highway subdivides and transfers any part of the land. So if I have 80 acres, the front 40 is on a highway, on a public road, the back 40 is not. And transfers any part of that land, so if I transfer the back 40, the owner shall provide a cleared easement at least 66 feet in width that shall be continuous from the highway to the part of the subdivision sold. So if I sell the back 40, I'm supposed to provide that. This is the way I'm reading that. Is that correct, Mr. Carlson?
I'm still reading it. Just bear with me here.
Okay,
Very good question. It's just I'm not prepared, wasn't prepared for it. So the owner shall provide a cleared easement at least 66 feet from the highway to the part sold. So if I fail to do that, the town board under this section, lay out a road. That's how I'm reading it.
so then the town board may require me as the seller to provide 66 feet easement across the front 40 to get to the back 40. So earlier I thought that there was no good news for town. I think this is good news because this prevents any new landlocked parcels from being created. Okay, it doesn't prevent this one doesn't deal with the old landlocked parcels, but this prevents a new landlocked parcel from being created, the way I read it.
Can I ask you, Tony, one question right now?
Sure, yeah, of course.
So if you requested an easement, does that mean the town has to provide a road or just the access?
I'm just reading that the town would force me as the seller of the back 40
Have an
to
easement?
grant an easement across
Yeah.
the front 40.
Because if you go to a town board, they probably would be more than willing to give you an easement, but they're certainly not gonna put like a town road just for one person. That's not gonna happen.
Correct. And we have a parcel in Chippewa County, just from Dunn County, that we sold land to the DNR. And they were granted a 25-foot easement around the edge of the field to get back to that parcel. There's no road on there, nothing, but they have right to get back in there. That come into play when the Wheaton tornado of a few years back went through, what we call the Wheaton tornado went through, and then they ended up the DNR logged it all off. So then they needed to exercise that easement to get back there. I actually went through another parcel to get there. It made more sense, but anyway, that's what they did.
I guess I have a follow-up. I was gonna ask the same question you asked, Kerry, but this provision calls for the town board may lay out a road. That's different than require an easement. Right? I mean, it sounds like, I don't know what that means exactly. Lay out a road. It almost sounds like you're required to construct the road.
That could be, yeah, I don't know. But
Wouldn't it be sufficient to say that town board may require the landowner provide them with an easement?
well, this is state statute, but it
State
gets,
statute.
this
okay.
is state statute, so.
We can't
but-
change that?
Can't
Oh, okay.
change, no, we can't change that. But if you look, but the town board could look over their glasses at me and say, either A, you provide us 16.5 foot easement to the back 40, or we're gonna come in and put a road through there. I think at least it provides somewhere along the line, it provides some leverage for the municipality to say that we're not gonna create any more landlocked parcels. That was the concern I had at one of the other meetings. And I think this prevents that, the more I.
Okay,
But the way it looks, that this here is more of a township ruling than like on a county concept, right? It's the town board, not the county board.
Yeah, it looks like it refers to the town board, but at least because every time it seems like every time there's a problem, the first guy they call is the town chairman. It's either the chairman or the clerk,
Mhm.
which would keep us from creating more phone call opportunities in the future.
Because on this same thing, because like I said, I had 160 acres that was landlocked. If I knew about this state statute, I wouldn't have to have gone 6 years and a lot of work to finally buy an access, and would have been done, so. I guess if you're not, your ignorance is no excuse, right?
Right.
Mhm.
That's about it.
And yeah. And if you talk to attorney, or I don't know if you attorney involved, they should have known this and should have gone back and leaned on the original attorney and gotten that straightened around. Yeah.
Any further questions? Anything else, Tony? Okay, thanks a lot.
Tom, that answers a lot of my questions now. I think we're covered.
Okay, then we will schedule a public hearing with these adjustments that have been talked about and go forward. Today's agenda appears to be are there any announcements?
Yes.
Yeah, Mike,
Chase gave a talk on Earth Day
yes.
and it was well received and did a very good job, which shouldn't surprise any of us, but did it good work.
Okay,
That was at the Russell Rossbach Museum in Wakanda Park. And yeah, it's wonderful getting the information out to the people in the county. I wish we had people there that didn't know anything about stuff, but we had quite a few people there, or he had quite a few people there. He did a good job. Thank you.
in the same vein, I'd note that there was a article in the Eau Claire Leader about the $150,000, the grant we got for
Yeah.
the Farmerly watershed, right?
May I speak on that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there was the Governor Evers attended, one of the farms. Some of the information in some of those news
Yeah.
stories were a little off, so there should be a Facebook post coming out through Dunn County today to kind of help clarify some of that, but it was very nice to get a little PR out of that project, so yes.
And Tina Barone was on TV for us
Oh, sure.
briefly.
Yeah, building some stars here. Anything else from staff or anybody else? Announcements?
I'd just like to, elaborate on what Mike said, but anytime you have a county official out dealing with the public, that's just good relations for everybody.
Yeah.
I think that's a job well done. Thank you.
Okay, so our next meeting is May 9th, which I think is a Tuesday, right? So we're pushing. Well, with this meeting, am I right for that? We changed this one because there's a staff retreat or staff training. So then following that, are we gonna move to continue with Tuesday? Until fall. And we'll, and okay, anything else? Then we're adjourned.